Woo! Welcome, everyone. How's everybody doing? I am Adrian Tecca, and this is Nick. You probably have seen him a lot more than me. And you may have seen both of us if you are part of our Plummeting People series. That's right, we started this game development with MongoDB series on Twitch last season, somewhere in the end of 2020. And we're back. We're back. We want to make more games. We want to learn more Unity. And we're changing up our format a bit. So before we kind of were over ambitious. I know a lot of us felt that way in 2020 of trying to do, one stream every week. And so I think we're going to change up this format. Let us know if you like it. We're going to try to build a somewhat smaller game, but a full game every stream. And we're going to do one once a month. So hopefully that equates to a much better tutorial and a much better game. So let us know how that works. And please feel free to ask any questions in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Nick, what are we building today?
Yeah, so we're gonna try to build a infinite runner type game. So some examples. I usually remember things like Temple Run, but Adrian, you have a different kind of go-to when it comes to infinite runners, right?
Yeah, they're kind of similar. When I think of Infinite Runner, I think of Subway Surfer. So if any of you have played that game before, it's fairly popular on mobile. It's literally an infinite running level, right? You're on a street or subway for that matter, and your character can only really go in like one of three places. You swipe left, you swipe right, you avoid obstacles, and you can collect potential, coins or some power-ups or something. And as it gets more advanced in the levels, it gets faster and faster and faster. So it becomes a little bit harder to try to avoid those things. And so that's what I think of when I think of Infinite Runner.
Yeah, definitely. But the kicker this time, different from our last year's streams, is that we actually have a Realm SDK for Unity to play around with. So this is it's in alpha right now. So it didn't exist last year. So this is going to spare us from having to do any kind of HTTP requests and things like that in the future, which is pretty convenient. We actually have the SDK engineer who built this SDK, the .NET SDK for Unity. His name is Nicola. He's going to be proctoring the chat with us today. So any questions that Adrian or myself can't answer, he is going to stick around and try to help us out. And I think there's probably others from MongoDB in the chat as well.
Thank you, Nicola. We know it's kind of late there, so give props to him.
Yeah,
All
definitely.
right, so where are we starting? Should we show people what this actually looks like if they've never seen Infinite Runner? Do you have an
Yeah, do you
example?
have
Do
your
you want me?
I can bring something up in my browser. Give me a second before you start sharing my screen.
Sure.
Uh,
So
so
just in case, if people have not seen what an Infinite Runner game looks like, just want to show
all
you
right,
what
I
we're
can
what
probably
we're
share my
thinking
screen.
of.
Oh, is this
Whoop.
is this Subway Surfer?
Yes.
There you go.
There we go. Except it's more like the
Yeah, this is like a big commercial. Hold on, there you go. Something like this.
there you go. Right. So you have some typical lanes that you are in, and you gotta avoid the oncoming trains so you don't die, and also try to collect coins. There you go.
Yeah,
Screenshots are, who would have thought screenshots
yeah,
are better than live video? Yeah. So just in case anyone doesn't know or has never played an Infinite Runner, that's what we're going to try to build today.
yeah.
And I made a request with Nick that while we were trying to prototype this, he's like, should we have something similar to coins? I'm like, yes, let's make it cake because cake
Yeah.
is amazing. And so we're gonna try to implement some cake into this game as well. So
And
for
you're
all
gonna
of
have to
those,
use your imagination too.
well, I mean, cake is cake, Nick.
Yeah.
So if any of you saw that tweet and you came for the cake, you shall see cake. Hopefully.
But on the other media assets, you're gonna have to use a little imagination too, because they're gonna be very simplistic, but the logic will be there.
The logic is what's important. We make it pretty
Yeah,
later, remember?
yeah, definitely. Uh, so should I start sharing my Unity? Should we get
Yeah.
into this? Get down to
Yeah.
business?
get down to business. Have Unity open and let's
Yeah.
go.
So the goal here is
Oops.
hopefully we can get through this in an hour. That's the goal, so that way it doesn't take too long. We're gonna build it from scratch though. This is just an empty Unity 2D project. We're gonna get the Realm stuff involved probably in the middle of this project. We're gonna get some of the graphic assets down first. But this is just just a blank project. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a few directories. I don't know if the font is small, but I'll talk you through it as we go. Inside of the assets directory, I'm going to create a directory called textures. This is going to have our image assets. I'm going to have a directory called scripts, which is going to have our C# scripts with all of our logic. I'm going to have a directory called prefabs. So this concept is we're actually going to store kind of a reference to a game object, so that way we can use it as many times as we want without it being on the scene itself. And we're going to get there a little later as well. I'm
Sweet.
loosely paying attention to the chat, so Adrian
Yes.
will be doing
I
that.
will monitor the chat for you. Don't worry. I will try to politely interrupt you if we have a question.
Oh, you can tell me to shut up at any time.
No,
No need to be polite
that's
about it.
Karen's job. That's Karen's job.
That's Karen. Is Karen in the chat? Maybe.
No,
She'll
maybe.
probably sneak in at some point in time.
So this is a good start. We like to start off just having it organized from the get-go, right? Makes things a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. And so I actually have our media assets for the textures already created. So I'll start minimizing windows here. So we have a
Are
project
these
directory.
do you have them? Do you have them as your assets? That would be great.
No, that'd be nice though, right?
That is an
All
amazing
right.
background.
Nice. Thanks. Just pulled it up off the internet. I didn't create it. So this is my project directory that Unity created. I'm going to go into textures. I have a pixel texture and a cake texture. I'm just going to drop them in. And that will populate them inside of Unity. Oh, cake, yes.
Sweet. Cake. Cake.
So they're in Unity. What I do want to do is I want to click on them first. So I know my pixel, it's not 100 pixels per unit. It's just straight up 1 pixel. So we want to get our sizing down. Likewise with the cake, it says it down here in the bottom right that it's 128 by 128. So I'm going to change that pixels per unit as well to 128. Get it more in tune, so that way it's the highest definition it could be. Next up, since these are just assets, let's go ahead and create some game objects to represent these inside of our game. So I'm going to just right click in the hierarchy. I never know how to say that word.
Hierarchy.
Hierarchy.
Yeah.
I'm going to say create empty. And for this one, I'm going to call it player. I'm going to create another one, and I'm going to call it obstacle. And then I'm going to create a third one, and I'm going to call it cake. So for the player, awesome. Oh, I saw you zoomed in. Perfect. And we're live, so if you have any questions, if you need to stop me, please do. Happy to stop. For the player, what we want to do is we want to render something for the actual object. So I'm going to add a component, and I'm going to add a Sprite Renderer. So I've clicked on player, and I'm adding a component called Sprite Renderer, and I'm going to drag the pixel over to this sprite. It's 1 pixel right here. It's large because that's the unit of measurement I chose to just define it as 1. And I'm going to move it out of the way. I'm going to move it down a little bit to the bottom. I'll actually center it as well. I'm going to change the Z index so everything's 0, so that way nothing kind of gets pushed back too far in the stack here. I'm going to add a sprite renderer to obstacle. So I'm going to say add component. I'm going to add sprite renderer. I'm going to as well make this a pixel as well. So I'm going to say drag it over. But now we can't really tell the difference between an obstacle and our player. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color.
Hey, sometimes the obstacle is ourself, right?
Yes, sure. I've made it red. I'm also going to change the size of it a little bit. So I'm going to say maybe this is 5. Maybe it's going to be something thinner. So that way it's noticeably different than the player.
Okay.
I'll move that up. I'll change the Z to 0. I'll also, just for the sake of being uniform, I'm going to change that to 0 as well. So we have a potential obstacle there that's not going to do anything until we add any logic to it. I'm going to click on cake. I'm going to follow the same strategy here. Add a sprite renderer. Drag cake over. I don't need to change any colors or sizes, so it's already good. So I'm going to place it right there. If I were to play it, it'd be nothing. It'd just be static. So what I want to do is I probably want to add some movement logic to all of this. So I'm going to go click on my scripts, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to say create C# script. And I'm going to call this script player. So this will represent the logic of our player. Oh, my screen just did a random flash for some reason. It's weird.
It's good now.
It's good now. Did everyone see that?
I think
kind of
so.
stuttered.
It's okay.
All right.
We won't talk about it.
So here's my Visual Studio Code. I'm going to zoom in so that way it's visible.
Yes.
This is for player. Before I start adding anything to it, I'm going to make sure that I click on my player, and I'm going to drag it over. So it's going to be a script on that particular game object. Now when I go back into Visual Studio Code, I can add some logic. So for example, we want this player to move left and right only. So yes. I'm going to add public variable. So I'm going to say public. I'm going to call this one float. This is going to be movement speed. So we're going to be able to define through the inspector how fast we want this player to move. And then inside of the update, where we're actually going to do the movement, glitch in the matrix. Okay, I see that comment too. Nice.
Yes, could be.
We're gonna do some movement. So we're gonna get some keyboard input. So I'm gonna say if input dot get key. I'm going to say key code, and this is going to be left arrow. So if the left arrow is pressed, then what we want to do is we want to transform the game object so that way it goes in the left direction. So transform is on the whatever object this script is attached to, position, and I'm going to say plus equals, so whatever the position is, plus or equal to vector 3 dot left. But we need to define a speed, so I'm going to say times movement speed. And because we're using the update method, and we're not going to be updating based on physics, we probably need to update based on the time, so the internal clock of the game. So we're going to say times time.delta time.
Sweet. And now this is now going to only accept the left arrow key, right? It's not going to, or will this also accept like a pressing on the letter A?
It won't.
Just
so if we wanted to, we could use the get access rather than get key, and it'll use whatever defaults you have set up in Unity's UI. But there are some things to worry about when it comes to that one. For this, I mean, since we're just moving left and right, it's probably just easier to do it this way. We're actually define the keys we want to use.
Gotcha.
But it's totally up to you. In our previous Fall Guys or plummeting people examples.
Nope, plummeting people. Yep. We're not trying to get sued here.
Right? We actually used the axis instead of specific arrow keys.
If you didn't know, that's what our background was about from our last season.
And all right. There was, 10 streams on that? It's definitely worth checking out if you're getting into Unity.
Oh, yes. I think I put it in a nice playlist now, so I'm going to link that in the chat for you while you continue. So if anyone wants to check that out.
I'm also going to use the input key for the right arrow. And we're going to do the same thing, but instead of vector left, we're going to use vector right. Now, we don't have movement speed defined yet, so I would want to do that inside of the UI. So it'll refresh for a second, hopefully. I have a missing semicolon, it looks like, somewhere. Do I? Complaining about a missing semicolon, but it looks like I have semicolons. Line 21 of player.
Go through.
Oh, else if. There we go.
There we go.
All right, so it'll refresh. And I'll click on the player again. I have a movement speed, so maybe I just say 3. At this point, we could actually play around with it, so I'm going to just hit that play button. And let me see if I can zoom in a bit. There we go. So the left and right arrow keys move the box. So it's a start.
Sweet.
Next step is we want these to fall, right?
Yes. Or at least be coming towards us.
Yeah. And the whole premise here is we're gonna get a lot more of these, and they're just gonna constantly fall, and we just have to dodge them as they come down forever until we hit one of them, right?
Yes, that'll be the object pooling that you'll talk about, which is kind of the main thing about infinite runners in general.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so we have the player. Let's go ahead and create another script. I'm going to create one. It's called C#, and I'm going to call it obstacle. And I don't know why it flashes like that. It's so weird. But I'm going to drag it over. What was that?
No, I was going to make another glitch in the matrix joke, but people are going to get tired of that. It wasn't even my joke. It was
I don't know what that is.
It was yes. It's Crane Hansen.
There we go. Perfect. All
so
right,
now we got to write some logic for the obstacle, right?
Yeah, definitely. So double-clicked obstacle. The whole idea is we want this thing to fall out of the sky. So what we can do is we can say transform dot position, and that's going to be plus or equal to vector 3 dot down, so down direction. And we can do the same kind of logic here. Let's go ahead and add a movement speed in case we want to specify something in the UI. I'll make it public. So vector down times movement speed times time dot delta time. So that'll make it fall down, or at least it should, if we go back and then see what we got here. Oh, I didn't define a movement speed. Let's define a movement speed. We'll just make it 3 again. They'll all move at the same speed. So it'll fall down, and it'll fall down forever. So let's fix that so it kind of reboots.
Now, do you do this so that movement? There's a reason that you're doing it this way, right? Why wouldn't we want to just use, say, the 2D rigid body or any of the things that have the built-in physics with these objects?
Yeah, we're gonna have some physics and colliders. Now, I mean, we could have these objects fall with gravity. That's an option. It's not absolutely necessary because maybe we're not assuming that it's actually falling, but we're moving forward, just in a top-down manner. It's totally up to you how you want to do it. We are still going to add some rigid bodies, but we're not going to have a dynamic physics where gravity and velocity are in the mix. It's going to be purely for collision reasons.
Sweet. No, that makes sense. I mean, maybe that one could be if you did quote unquote infinite runner, but you were, I don't know, skydiving and falling down or something, right?
Sure. Yeah, why not?
Right.
Yeah. So I'm going to say if transform dot position dot y is less than or equal to -6. So if it's fallen to a certain point on the screen, I don't know where, we may have to play around with that number. But if it's less than that, what we can do is we can say, at least for now, transform dot position equals new vector 3. And this is where we actually define a position rather than just increase a certain direction. So we can say the x probably doesn't need to change, so we can say transform.position.x. The y, though, will change. So this could be maybe +5, +6,
Yep.
doesn't matter. We'll just flip them. And then the z will be the same.
All right.
So let's just double check that before we get too involved. We're definitely gonna pick up soon. Just laying the groundwork. So it fell, and it keeps coming. No object pools, no destructions, just the same object changing locations whenever possible.
Sweet.
So we could do the same thing for the cake. We're gonna hold off on the cake for now. Let's worry about collisions now.
Save the best for last.
Yes, save the best for last. Unless it's like some kind of weird cake that nobody likes, right?
How is that possible? Everybody has some kind of cake that they like, right?
Maybe like a carrot cake or something.
Validate me, chat. What's your favorite kind of cake? Put it in the chat.
There's got to be a terrible type of cake too, right?
Fine. That would be even more difficult. Is there a cake that someone doesn't like? But then again, that's subjective. Like some people don't like carrot cake. They don't want all the carrot bits in there. They just want cake. Or some other people put raisins in their cake, and people like that. People don't.
I don't want carrot cake.
You don't like carrot cake?
No.
It has to be very specific.
All right. Yes. Collision. So we can click on obstacle. We can add a component. Like I said, we're going to add a rigid body 2D. Instead of dynamic, it's going to be kinematic. So it's not going to have all of the gravity effects. And we're also going to add a box collider.
Okay.
And because we're using kinematic and we're not doing any of the rigid body collision type stuff, it's going to be a trigger. Now, a trigger, it's when we cross into another trigger-based collider, it's going to notify us, but it's not going to do anything about it. It's not going to push us out of the way. It's not going to do any of that good stuff, which is fine. We just want to know that a collision has happened, and then we could apply our own kind of logic. And I don't know, we didn't mention it, but you might have already figured it out by now. When we collide, and what we're going to be using Realm for is we're going to be using Realm for keeping score for this game.
Okay.
So we don't really need to actually push the object out of the way when that happens.
Gotcha.
The player, I'm going to do the same thing. Add a box collider. It's going to be a trigger. Add a component. This is going to be a rigid body. Again, this is going to be a kinematic rigid body. And then likewise on the cake, we're going to do the same thing.
Yep, that makes sense, right? They both have different triggers. One is a good thing, one is a bad thing. But the setup of how we are notified that something has to happen is definitely by those settings.
Yep. All right, so let's go ahead and go back into our code now. So let's go into our player, and let's go ahead and figure out, well, how do we know if something collided? So I'm going to say void, and I'm going to say on trigger enter 2D. So this is going to be when the trigger just enters. Now there's other functions like exit and I think stay, but we only care about when it first touches. And then we can say something like debug. Actually, yeah, we'll just say debug log for now. And we can show it real quick. Yeah, so it collided. And if I moved it out of the way, it wouldn't. So that it hit it twice, it shouldn't hit it a third time. All right, perfect.
Yep.
So it's a start.
As expected. Yep.
Yes, collision works. Now what we want to do is let's go ahead and add some more UI elements for scorekeeping. We're going to start getting Realm into the mix now. I think we're at a good point for it.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and left click, or right click, I mean, and we're going to add text. This is going to be high score. I'm also going to add another UI element for text. This is going to be current score. So we want to know our high score between runs. So just so that way we can try to beat it.
Yep.
For the canvas, because it's a little wacky right now on its placement, we want to change it to camera, and we want to provide the camera. So I'm dragging it over, so that way the text is positioned better within the viewport. I'm going to change this to, what is this, high score that I've selected. So I'm going to say high score.
Yep, this is high score. Yep.
And I'm going to say that this is bold. It's going to be 20 in font size, middle aligned, and it's going to have white text so that way it's visible. It's at the bottom. I'm going to change the position. I'm going to create the pivot point on the top left up there, and then I'm going to drag it up. It just has to do with how the X and the Y position is appropriate towards a particular axis. So that's probably fine. Do the same thing for this one. It's going to be white text again. And change the position. And I'll drag it somewhere up there. Let's make them a little larger, maybe 190, to give them space for in case you have an insanely high score, right?
Yes.
Then maybe this is 100, maybe 110. We'll make it both the same. All right, so that way it looks semi-decent, right?
Yep.
Perfect. Let's see here. So let's go ahead and create another script to maintain score, right?
Yes. So what is our score going to be based on? Is it going to be just actually collecting the cakes, or is it going to be based on something else?
So it depends on what we want to do. I like to kind of do both.
Okay.
At least I think that's probably how the other games probably do it too.
Yeah.
I want to have a score based on how long you've survived,
Yep.
and then some kind of multiplier based on the cake that you've obtained. So that way it gives you incentive to get the cake.
So let me guess, this is going to be incrementing based on some sort of time, right? As we continue to survive in the game.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and create another script. I'm going to call this one score controller. And like it flashes every time I create a new script for some reason. It's so weird.
This is going to be a running joke now. It's going to have to be.
So. Yeah, it's going to have to be. Maybe it's a Windows thing. Maybe my NVIDIA drivers needs to be updated or something. Who knows?
At the end of this, we'll count how many glitches occurred.
Yeah, for sure.
Or someone's probably keeping track.
Maybe. All right, for the score controller, let's go ahead and double click it. And I'm going to first add some public text elements to represent our high score and our current score. So that way we can actually access and change them from this score controller. So I'm going to say public. This is going to be high text, high score text, and then maybe current score text. And then in the start, we can leave it like that for now. I'm going to save it. I'm going to go back into Unity. Didn't yell at me. Of course it's yelling at me. I'm going to go back into my code here. I think I need to be using Unity engine.ui. Yeah.
There you go.
I think that'll solve it. I would really love if Unity created like official bindings or something for Visual Studio Code to make it a little easier.
Mm-hmm.
I think they prefer you to use their full version of Visual Studio instead. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a score controller. It's not attached to anything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create another game object. It's going to be empty. I'm going to call this one game controller. So this is going to be in charge of controlling our actual game outside of player and obstacles and cake. It's going to do all of the bookkeeping, you can say. So I'll click it and I'll drag the score controller into it. We need to define our high score and our current score. So I'm going to drag the text over to it. A lot of what I'm doing is just drag and drop so far. There's not a whole lot of coding involved, right?
That's the beauty of it. It seems like it would take something more complicated or difficult to achieve this, but hopefully we're showing that it's literally a few scripts of C# and you can get something up and running, and then it's up to your imagination what you want to do. Like if you don't like cake, make it donuts. If you don't like coffee, like some people, you can make it Mountain Dew.
Yeah,
right,
like
Nick?
me. Exactly. So this this might be actually let's go ahead and start keeping the time-based score. So we're going to increase it as time progresses. So what we can do is go back into our code, and I am going to say for the update, this is our score controller. I'm going to say current score text equals. This is going to be score. And I'm going to say that this is math f floor, because I'm going to be using the actual timer. And the timer, it's going to give me milliseconds. So I'm going to floor it so that way it gives us a nice even whole number to work with. But I'm going to say time, and I'm going to say time since level load, I think is the... We can look it up if it's not right. But if I saved it, it should keep count for us.
Okay.
Yeah. See how it is increasing. So that's going to be our first starting point of what we store in Realm and in our overall high score. So let's get Realm into our application. So this is where things get a little interesting. So this, like I said, this is alpha right now. It literally just went out not too long ago. So if I go back to my browser, it's actually part of the Realm.net. So if you're familiar with Realm for .net, you should have a pretty easy time with Realm for Unity, because it's pretty much the same thing. What we have to be concerned about right now is there's no sync support as of right now. So everything that we can do with Realm in the current release, which you can actually get in the releases area, is all local to your game. Now that means it still works with Android, iOS, PC, some of the platforms, but it won't sync as of right now. It will in the future, but just not right now.
It's always good to know.
Yes, and it's alpha, so I mean, I personally wouldn't use this in a production game yet, but at least you can start playing around with it and get a good idea of what's coming, and hopefully improve whatever game writing experience that you have currently.
Yes, more importantly, if you are trying it and you do see things that are confusing or pain points or things that you love, let us know, because we have direct access to the engineers who are influencing this. So please,
Yeah.
please let us know. Try it out.
I think Nicola might still be on the chat. I know it's probably like midnight over there for him right now, in I think
Yes.
Denmark.
Yes, so we do have an engineer from the Realm.net team. So if you have any specific questions or you're perusing the repo and you have to ask, just ask in the chat right now. He is watching, and we'll answer them.
I've already downloaded it, but I actually downloaded the Realm Unity bundle file right here, and it was actually released just 23 hours ago.
Nice.
I didn't want to have to worry about weird internet connection issues. But if you go into Unity and you go to Window and you go to Package Manager, and then what you can do is you can click on Add Package from Tarball. Now, eventually, when this is not alpha and it's actually production ready, it'll be searchable like any other Unity asset. But for now, you have to do it manually. So we're going to add Tarball, and on my desktop, I'm going to say open. take just a few seconds. It's usually pretty fast when I do it.
You jinxed it, Nick.
It's done. It didn't take that long.
It's not too bad.
All right. Hopefully this doesn't mess anything up down here. I see this error message or this warning. I've always done this on Mac. I haven't tried it on Windows, so this is going to be a experiment for sure. But I think it'll be fine. If worst case scenario is, I think I probably just have to change my target. What is it? OS X right now. Let's maybe go ahead and change it. So build settings, and then maybe player settings. I don't know. I don't even know where I'm looking. It'll probably yell at us when the time comes, or Nicola might post in the chat. Maybe let me
Nick,
just
do
build
this.
it. Yeah. Go ahead and say new. See if it works. Not complaining so far. All right. I think it's good.
That's always good.
Yeah. All right. We shouldn't have to go back to that. Should remember the settings and not choose Mac OS anymore. All right. So we added
like
Realm.
a life pro tip.
Yeah, right.
And
Don't use
this
Mac
is
for
the
game development.
and this is the engineer that we're talking about. So he is still in the chat. Thanks, Nicola.
Oh, he is. All right. Maybe he caught that. Maybe he knows what's going on. But it didn't seem to disrupt anything.
Yep, and that's exactly what Nicola says.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and add another script. I'm going to call this one player stats. Doesn't really matter what you call it, just like everything else that we've done so far. But this one is going to represent our actual data model for our Unity or our Realm. So I'm going to open it, and we're going to. It's no longer going to be a mono behavior. It's going to be a Realm object for now.
Okay.
And as far as the imports, because it's not, this is more or less just a general class, it's going to be using realms. And we're also going to scrap these methods because start and update, they're part of the mono behavior, I think. So because we're not using mono behavior, we don't need them. So Realm, let's go back to my web browser for a second. So there's actually a getting started with Realm for .NET that's not really specific to Unity. It's actually linked inside of the GitHub. So it's just a kind of getting started guide.
Okay.
A lot of this setup is more or less ripped off from the quick start. So for example, we're gonna be defining a primary key for Realm. We're gonna be defining some fields to work with, and we're gonna say get instance. A lot of this is really ripped off from here. So it's a very good quick start guide. Are you going to drop that link in the chat, Adrian?
Yes, you mean reused, right? Reused.
Yes, reused, not ripped off. All right, so what we can do is we can say primary key. Our primary key, generally, since this is a game and we're competing for the highest score, whether that be against ourselves or somebody who might potentially be, when sync works, somebody else, we probably want our scores to be associated to our user. But I'm going to hard code a user in this example. But regardless, we're going to have some kind of username as our primary key. So I'm going to say public. I'm going to say string, and I'm going to call it username. And it's going to have a getter and setter. What's going on?
No, nothing.
Basically ripped off what leverage, right? Leverage what's going on
there
here.
You go. Use some
so let's go back in. I'm going to have a score. So this is going to represent our high score. So I'm going to say this is I'm actually going to change it up a bit. This is going to be a realm integer. We could use a regular int, but from what I was told, if we use a realm integer, we have extra features that come with it, so we can actually increment it rather than having to use it. So we might play around with both, actually.
Okay.
Let's just go ahead and call it realm integer. We'll play around with both as we progress. So I'm going to say score. This is going to be a get and a set. And it's going to require us to have a constructor. So I'm going to say public, and it's going to be player stats. And we're actually going to have a constructor that sets those as well. So I'm going to say public player stats, and we're going to say string username. And let's go ahead and say int score. So this dot username equals username, and this dot score, which just for consistency purposes, I'll do uppercase.
I appreciate it. I was waiting to see if you would notice, and there would be a threshold where I would have asked you to uppercase it. So.
I'm surprised. Have I been using underscores and doing stuff the C# way? I'm trying to get better at that.
I think so. For the most part, you have actually, it's pretty good.
The one thing I refuse to do, and this is me coming from a JavaScript and Go background, is I refuse to put these on a new line, the brackets. That's like complete nonsense right there. You're going to tell me I'm wrong, though.
You do you. You do you, man. Just all C# developers looking at you right now. It's like, what?
And they immediately leave the video, right?
Just pop on in here and they're like, oh my gosh, why are the braces there? Leave. So.
Yeah, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. It just bothers me when it's like on the line. I know it. I guess it is more readable that way, but I've been conditioned to never do that ever. So
awareness is the first step, Nick.
Yeah. So we have the player stats. Now what we probably want to do is we probably want to access this. So inside of maybe score controller, let's go to make use of it. So this we can say is a private. We can say player stats.
Oh, look at that with the underscore.
Yeah,
so proud.
I'm getting there, right? I'm getting there, nice and slow. This is where we're going to use the realm. So we're going to say using realms. And we're first going to start things off. Well, actually, I need a realm variable. So I'm going to say private. I'm going to say realm. And I'm going to underscore it as realm. And we're going to get that instance, just like that quick start said. So we're going to say underscore realm equals, what do we got? Realm.getInstance. I don't know, I already forgot. Let me go back. Yeah, realm.getInstance. I'll just copy it. All right, so we have the instance to the realm, and this score controller is going to handle all of our, for this particular example, all of our realm usage. But next up is I want to see if a player object already exists for the user that I want to use. If not, I want to create it so that way we can actually use it inside of our game. And for now, we're going to do this inside of the start. So what we can do is we can say player stats equals underscore realm dot find. We're finding a player stats. And then we provide it what exactly we're looking for, which is, in this case, our primary key, our username. And for this, I'm going to call it nraboy. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to see if it's null. If it's null, our find came back empty-handed, which as of right now, I think that should be the case. So I'm going to say if player stats equals, or I'll say is null. If it's null, let's go ahead and create one. So that way we have something ready to go. So I'm going to say realm, and I'm going to say write. And when we want to write something into our realm local database, it has to be inside of this kind of write block. Anytime we want to do a write. If we want to do a read, we don't have to do it inside of that block, but any writes will have to be in there. And that's a Realm thing. That's not a Unity thing.
Okay.
It's in that quick start guide as well. So what we want to do is we want to say player stats dot add, and we want to say new player stats. And this is where we use that overloaded constructor. I'm going to say enraboy, and I'm going to say that we're creating a 0 score. Finally, because at this point we should either have found a player stat or if we have created one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the high score. So I'm going to say high score text dot text equals high score. And this is not going to be based on the time. This is going to be based on whatever we've succeeded at. And for this, what we can do actually is we can say player stats dot what did I call it? Score. And score is a flavor of int. It's a realm integer, but so we're going to say toString to make it a string. Now the cool thing is we've either found it here or we've created it here, but in the end, regardless, we're still going to have something to work with, whether or not we've just created it or already had it. We don't have to then do a second query to kind of grab it again after we've added it.
That makes sense.
So if I save it, I'm going to go into Unity. I'm going to hit, actually, I don't know. I hooked up the score controller, right?
I don't think you did because I see some sort of.
Yeah, right here.
Oh.
It is yelling at me though. Player stats does not contain a definition for add. What did I try to add on? I probably, this should be something else. So this should be
Realm
equals. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Let's try that again. It's always nice when it gives us an error message that's not awful, right?
Yes, something that is
so
useful.
I'm going to hit play. So we have something going on. Actually, I'm not actually setting it. I mean, I set it as 0, which is good, but it's not actually going to save the high score. So let's make a change. So we probably want to set the high score when there's a collision with an obstacle.
Yes.
And in addition to that, we probably want a function that'll handle that for us. So I'm going to create a function in the score controller. I'm going to call it void. I'm going to say set high score. And I'm going to do an if statement. But first, I'm gonna get this and set it in a variable. So I'm gonna say this is I think that's a float. So this is going to be a snapshot of the score. And I'm gonna say if snapshot is greater than player stats dot score, then we're going to update it. So this is where we do another realm write. So I'm going to copy it. Oh, my editor did that automatically. That's so terrible.
That's right.
When I pasted it.
Listen to your editor.
Yeah. I'm going to say player stats dot score equals snapshot score. I think that'll work. And we're not actually calling that yet. So we want to do that probably in the player when this collision happens. To do that, I got to go back into my Unity editor. It's where am I forgetting to cast? Oh, it's a realm int. So let's cast that real quick before we forget. Int. That should do the trick. Maybe. Oh no. This is I did forget to do something. And this is something that was critical for this alpha version. All right, so I will have to exit out of Unity forcefully, and I'll explain what happened. It was a bug that we determined, but there's no fix yet. It's just an editor-related bug. So I'm going to close it. Probably going to have to Control-Alt-Delete it.
It's all right. This is the real process.
Yeah, right?
Not all
So
the time, meaning we run into issues and we overcome them.
let me kill it. I'll open it again. Hopefully we didn't lose any progress of any sort. I've been trying to save regularly.
What is it that you needed to do?
So we didn't do any cleanup of our realm after we've added it. So I'm going to go into my editor here. So we've created it. We're trying to use it, but what we actually have to do is we have to destroy it or dispose of it when our game ends. Otherwise, it stays open. It starts causing problems, especially in the Unity editor, which behaves differently than an actual built version of the game. So this is more to accommodate the Unity editor right now.
Okay.
So inside of score controller, because that's where we're actually using Realm, let's go ahead and create a on disable. And then in the on disable, we're going to say realm, and we're going to say dispose. Yeah, it took us a while to figure this one out, and I'm sure this will be corrected as we get to a production ready release. But after having added this line right here, that problem disappeared immediately. So I'm so glad it didn't fool me wrong, or prove me wrong just now. Although I think I have other issues with my Unity.
Oh, do you have multiple?
I don't know. Unity Hub behaves very strange for me on Windows in comparison to my Mac.
Yeah, lately, I don't know if it's because of the latest version or also they said they were slowly phasing out
Yeah, there
Unity
was an
Hub.
update as well that I didn't update to. It came out the other day. So maybe they made some improvements there. All right. Maybe it works this time. It looks like it's fine. Let me just run it and see where we are here.
Sweet.
It looks good. And if I stop it this time, I don't think there's any issues.
Okay.
So that was just a small hiccup there. But don't let it deter you from using this because it actually works quite well for an alpha.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what we have to do is we have to add a way to access this score controller from our player. So inside of the player, let's go ahead and add a public score controller. We'll call this maybe score. And if I save it and go back into Unity, all right, it scared me there for a second. So if we go back, player is going to be now expecting, or at least allow us to add a score controller. We can't just add the script there, but the game controller has the score controller script. So I'm going to drag it in. So that'll give us access to the score controller. So if I saved it and if I went back into the player, what I could do is I could say, what did I call it? Set high score. So I can say score.set high score. And let's save it. Let's go back into score controller. And what I could do is I could update the score here. Or I could just like restart the scene. Let's just go ahead and update it right here first. So I'm going to say high score text. I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to update it. I guess, hold on, let's use our snapshot so it's consistent. I think that'll be fine.
Hello, Martin. Thanks for joining us.
Inaccessible. Oh, I didn't define it as public. All right. All right. So if I collide, it should update it. Yeah. So it updated to 2. And if I stopped it and I started it again, it should still say 2. Hopefully. Maybe.
Hold on.
I know. What did I do wrong this time? I don't know. I'm having some issues today.
Maybe it's not you. Maybe it's Unity.
It could be. I'll just kill it. I don't know. Sometimes this happens to me. I really got to update my Unity.
Sure.
Killing it. Coming back in.
Really, nobody has posted their favorite or non-favorite cake in the chat.
I guess
I'm
no one has
disappointed.
a non-favorite.
I guess nobody likes cake except for me. That's fine.
Yeah, maybe.
More for me. More for me.
All right. Did this still save our? Yeah. All right. Still good. Where was I? It should still say 2, right?
Yes. Now that you've stopped it.
Yeah. It
And
still
there you
said
go.
2.
Sweet.
All right.
Persisted.
All right. Next up. So let's go ahead and maybe restart the scene every time we collide with an obstacle. And then what we're going to do is we're going to randomize these obstacles and then hopefully get an object pool. I know that it said it'd take us about an hour, but we did run into a few hiccups. But we're almost done. And we've got Realm in there, and we can play a little bit more with Realm as well.
Yeah.
So totally just had a brain fart. What did I just say I was going to do?
We were going to move the obstacles around because unless you wanted the easiest infinite runner ever. Yes, and also restart every time we crash. Yeah.
All right, so if I go to player, let's go ahead and maybe we'll add the scene manager.
It's been a long week. I think you all can relate to Nick.
Yeah, I know, right? So I'll say Unity Engine, scene management. Say scene manager, and we'll say, I think it's load scene. And then we can get the current scene because we only have one. We're just refreshing it. We're restarting it when we collide. No game over screen for this particular game.
Got it. So it's just like you're transported right back to the beginning and just try again.
Yep. So the active scene and then the index for the active scene. So whatever Unity thinks is the index for that. So that'll restart it.
Okay.
All right. So now randomization, right, of the obstacle?
Yes. Unless we want, this could be like the tutorial where it's always in the same spot.
No.
Yeah, this joke. Please randomize the obstacles and cake.
All right. So in the start, so when this starts, let's go ahead and come up with a random position for it. This is for the obstacle. And we're going to have many obstacles just by basically including a reference to this. So we're not going to have to do it 1,000 times. But we're going to say maybe int, or actually we can say float, and we can say random position x.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to say random dot range. And let's give it like a negative 8.0 to 8.0f. We can always play around with those numbers, but it'll pick a position, a floating position between those.
Okay.
Then what we can do is we can say transform dot position equals new vector, and it's, let me just copy this, paste that in. The y isn't going to change, so I'm going to say transform.position.y, and the x is going to be whatever that random position is.
Mm.
Now, it's only going to do it one time, but it should hopefully get our point across, and it should restart after we collide. Random range isn't not accepting a float. Did I forget to declare one of them as a float?
Pause.
Oh, that's not right. My editor must have automatically changed that for me as I was typing it.
Ah.
It's not supposed to be that.
Yeah. I just saw random first on the very beginning, so brain immediately was like, that's correct.
So it's not quite on center this time. It's a little over. Let's let that one. Oh, you know, it actually, it's going to keep the same position because we only have it in the start, and that's the first frame, so it's going to go on forever. But you can see that it
Every time
increased
you
our high score.
restart.
Yeah,
Yes.
because we have time since level loaded, but the level
Mhm.
reloads every time we collide. So it should be, what, 9 right now, 10? Yeah. So it's
There
keeping
you
the high
go.
score for us. All right, so this is where we get into the object pooling side, and this is where we start getting a ton of these row elements. And we can actually get our inspiration, is that what we can call it, off of this object pooling tutorial from the Unity website.
Yes.
And it's essentially what we're doing is we're going to predefine X number of obstacles to choose from, and that's going to be our pool. And instead of destroying an object, we're going to add it back into the pool while we're not using it, because technically, if we were to do what we're doing, or not really what we're doing now, although what we're doing now would be kind of hard to maintain. If we
Mhm.
were to destroy our object and then recreate them, that uses a lot of resources, and it would cause pretty dramatic effects in the negative fashion on mobile if we were to do that. So it's good to keep a pool that's loaded at the beginning of your game, like what, you know, when you're playing like on Nintendo Switch or whatever. There's a long loading screen at the very beginning. It's that's what it's doing. It's preparing all of these resources up front, so that way it doesn't have to do it mid game.
Yep, that makes sense. It's probably a similar thing that they did on the I already forget what it's called, but you remember the Fall Guys level where you gotta make it through as the obstacles kept coming your way. It's like a
Oh yeah, the
version. It's not
fruit.
a no, the other one where you're all on a platform and there's a only a very specific opening on one of the sides and you got to make it there and the obstacles keep coming at you faster rather than you running through. But
Yeah,
in the same vein, they probably just loop through different obstacles coming around.
yeah, maybe. I'm gonna add another script. I'm gonna call this object pool. I'm gonna open it. What is going on? It's doing it again. We'll let it linger there for a second. I'll actually open up the object pool here and start
Okay,
working on it, and we'll see if it fixed itself soon.
sure.
We're not going to let it tie us up too much. We actually don't have much to do. We're going to create the object pool, and then we're pretty much done at that point. And the object
Yep.
pool isn't even that much to do. But what we want to do is we want to define a few public variables, so that way we could define what game objects are going to be in our pool. We also want this to be a static instance, so that way we could pull objects from this pool wherever we want. It's going to use the same pool. It's not going to create a new pool depending on where we're trying to access it from. So I'm going to say public static. This is going to be object pool, and this is going to be a shared instance or an instance or whatever you want to call it. And we're going to use that instead of the awake. So the awake is going to trigger before start. Start is first frame. Awake is much sooner. It's just one of those Unity lifecycle events.
Hmm.
I'm going to say void awake. And this is going to be shared instance equals this. So this particular instance. That's a singleton instance, right, Adrian?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, so we have the public static. Let's go ahead and have our list of objects in our pool. So we're going to say public. We can say this is going to be a list. It's going to be just a generic game object. And let's go ahead and call this one pooled obstacles. Why doesn't that look right? Is that how you spell obstacles?
Yep.
Yeah, it is. All right. It's getting late in the day for me. Later than I normally stay online. Let's go ahead and add another one. Let's go ahead and have the game object. So our particular obstacle to pool. So one that we want to pull out of the pool. So we're going to say obstacle to pool. And then we're going to have the amount of obstacles we want to have in our pool. So that way, if we want to say we have 3 or 10 or 50, at least we can define them in the UI. So we're going to say amount, maybe obstacle pool size, maybe. I think
that makes sense to me.
Fair name.
Mm-hmm.
Inside of the start, this is where we actually start initializing our pool. So we're going to say pooled obstacles. We can say equals new. We're just going to initialize this list. And it's a game object. There's no such differentiation between an obstacle or cake, or they're all game objects. It doesn't matter. We're going to have a loop. So we're going to say for I is less than obstacle pool size. And this is where we're going to add, we're going to initialize them. So we're going to create a temporary obstacle because we needed to define specific properties per game object that we add because we want to set it as inactive by default. So I'm going to say game object. We're going to call this temp obstacle, and we can leave it at that. But what we're going to do is we're going to say temp obstacle, and we're going to instantiate an obstacle. This is where our prefabs are going to come in. We're going to, rather than having the obstacle active on the screen at the start, it's going to load one from our prefab that we're going to define. So we don't have that yet, but we will.
Okay.
Instantiate, and this is going to be our obstacle to pull. Oops. Yeah, just making sure that looks right. So our instantiated object right here, we're going to say temp obstacle dot set active. This is where we're defining some properties on the object itself. So we want it to be false. We want them to be available and ready for pooling. Okay. And then what we can say is pooled obstacles dot add, and we're going to add the temp obstacle. So this is how we initialize our object pool. We also want to be able to pull from that object pool. So this is where we're going to see if we have any that are inactive that we can use. Okay. So I'm going to say public game object, and I'm going to say get pulled obstacle, and I'm going to do a loop because I need to loop through all of our obstacles in the pool to figure out which one, the first one that's available. I'm going to say I is less than obstacle pool size. And I am going to do an if statement. So I'm going to see if it's inactive. So I'm going to say if pooled obstacles I, and this is going to be active in, and then I think it's hierarchy. Yep. And if it's false. So if it's false, it's ready for use. Okay. And if it's ready for use, let's return it to whoever wants to use it. And then they're going to set it to true as if it's being actively used at that point. If we wanted to, we could set it to true before we return it, but it doesn't matter. Otherwise, there's not one available to use, so we're going to say return null. And hopefully we're not trying to use more objects than we've pooled, because then maybe we want to increase our pool size. So let me see. Oh, there you go. It fixed itself. All right, so
just needed some time.
Yeah. Let's go to the game controller. Let's go ahead and drag this object pool into it because it's going to manage our pooling. Let's go ahead and figure out what obstacle we want to do, and let's go ahead and say that maybe we want to pool up 10 of them. We have obstacle here. It has its own script. It has all of its rigid body and stuff. Let's go ahead and turn it into a prefab. So I'm going to take obstacle and I'm going to drag it into my prefabs directory. And you see it went blue because now it's a prefab and we can remove it from the scene. And we can call it through the instantiate method that you saw in the object pool. And it'll have the script. It'll have all of the same settings that were defined when we created a prefab of it.
Yep. So this is a way to reuse these game objects, right?
Correct.
With these particular settings.
Correct. So now we need a way to actually pull from the pool. And we're gonna rely on this game controller. We're actually gonna create another script, and there's a million different ways to do this as far as deciding what objects have what scripts or how much of a script you want to include together. This is just I'm trying to break it up so that way it's small and consumable here.
Mm-hmm.
So game controller, I'm gonna drag it over to this game controller game object, and I'm gonna open it, and hopefully nothing freezes. Perfect. we've had a lot of freezing in this stream compared to other streams.
Lots of glitches today.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna change it up, but we're gonna add it to the start just for now. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say game object, and I'm gonna say obstacle equals object pool dot shared instance, so that singleton instance. And I'm gonna say get pooled obstacle. We're gonna check to see if it's null. So obstacle equals null. No, actually we want to see if it's not null. If it's not null, then we want to set it to active. And like I said, we could have done it inside of the object pool as well. But we can say obstacle dot set active to true. So it's being used. And let's go ahead and try it. So when it starts, the game controller will pull an obstacle from the pool, and then the obstacle logic will be applied after that. So it's going to pick a random position, and it's going to go down. And it's only going to happen one time because it's in our start on the first frame. So it's only going to happen once. But let's just confirm that works first. All right, hit play. Didn't do anything. Obstacle to pool hasn't been defined. Did I forget to define? Yeah. All right. So I didn't drag the prefab over. So the prefab needs to be dragged over to the particular what should be defined as an obstacle.
Ah, gotcha.
All right. So index was out of range. Out of range exception. Wondering what's out of range. It's not. Is it giving me a line number?
Has
line
there nothing
36 and line 10. The line 10 in here. Get pulled obstacle. Do you see anything that'd be out of range?
Not immediately. I'm looking. So you go through. What are you setting as the obstacle pool size?
Yeah, did it not take maybe? I thought it took because I saw a bunch of them.
Oh, 10. Okay. So you are going through that. Index was out of range. Is it happen? Did it say it was happening here or in the game controller?
It was happening on line 36, and it was happening in the game controller on line 10. Anyone in the chat see anything that could be up? Oh, you know what? I'm wondering if there's a race condition with all of the starts, because I think with Unity, you can't define an order of which start executes first. So I'm wondering if the object pool start is happening after that start.
So you might have to
So
move it to the update. Is that what you're saying?
that, or I'm wondering what happens if I change this to on enable, which should happen before the start. Let's try it. It worked.
Hmm.
It was race condition related. So
Interesting.
it never ends up back in the pool, and you can see on the left here a bunch of them are grayed out, one's active, but it created 10 of them for us on the fly because that's what our pool was set up. So if we go
Right.
back into the code and we go into say obstacle, so the obstacle itself, instead of kind of rebooting it, let's go ahead and say that game object, so this game object, whatever this script is attached to, we're going to say set active to false. So we're going to add it back into the queue when it falls off the screen. And then it's going to go through all of this logic again when it becomes activated. And for our game controller, we want to be able to fire off numerous of them rather than just one in the start. So we should do it in the update. We should do it based on a timer as well.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and create some variables. I'll say private, and we'll call this one maybe float, and we'll say time until obstacle. And let's go ahead and say this is going to be 1.0 F. And we'll say private float. And we'll call this maybe obstacle time. And so the obstacle time will represent how much time must be waited between obstacles. And then the time until obstacle represents how much time is remaining until a new obstacle can trigger. And basically, when this hits 0, we'll reset it back to this. So that way, every X number of seconds, it spits one out, right? So let's calculate it.
Oh no, I was just about to say I'm at that point now where obstacle looks like a weird word because I keep looking at obstacle. So
yeah, believe me, I want to type in AL at the end of it instead of LE for some reason. Let's go ahead and have our timer. So I'm going to say time until obstacle, and this is going to be minus the delta time. So the delta time is actually the time difference between when the frame was rendered from the last frame. So it's gonna be our way of having a consistent countdown to 0. So I'm gonna say time dot. Visual Studio Code is gonna mess me up with that again, where it automatically populates delta time. So I do have a minus in there, and basically what we want to do is if time until obstacle is less than or equal to 0, then what we should do is we should pull one out. And it did the bracket thing, but after it pulls one out, let's go ahead and say time until obstacle equals obstacle time. So in this circumstance, it should continuously spit obstacles out as long as they're available in the queue.
Sweet.
Yeah. It did too. So let's think about why. Why did it stop at 2? I gave it enough time, right?
I believe so.
All right, so it stopped at 2. Let's check out obstacle. Yeah, so it stopped at 2 because we're using start here, and start is only on the first frame. So after we've set it as inactive, start is never going to trigger again.
Right. It only does once. So we actually need to move the randomization of where it is to also repeat.
So we want it to be on enable. So we want it to be after, when it's set to active, this on enable is called. So let's go ahead and try it. Hopefully that was it.
Oh, a little bit
No,
tricky there.
we only got 2.
Hmm.
So we're missing something else still. Um. All right, I see it. Do you see it on line 14?
Mm, no.
So we're not defaulting a position here. We were defaulting a position down here before we were adding them back to the pool. So we need to do the same
Oh,
thing
gotcha.
because it's still retaining the rest of the properties after we've disabled it.
Right, right.
So was it positive? I think it was positive, right?
Yeah.
It's probably positive 6F, and that should be it. So I'm just trying to dodge them. Oh, we got 3 of them this time, so we're doing better. All right, so it worked,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it restarted afterwards.
Hmm.
So that's good. What we might want to do now is, because they were kind of random, and your Subway Surfer type games are not necessarily everywhere for the trains. They're usually on railways, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we want to lock it down to maybe 3 possible railways.
Yeah, you can only
And we don't have
move
to,
right,
but we
left. We
can.
don't have to. But there is something I did see, which was it didn't seem like it actually saved the high score when we got a new one. Did you notice that?
Is it because the high score wasn't as much as the previous? So 10. Should we try to beat 10 seconds here just to
Yes.
make sure?
Yeah. Maybe I'm seeing things. Maybe it's another glitch in the matrix. But
All right, 11. Yeah, it worked.
oh,
It made it to 12. And then
do
it
we do
still
we
12.
only do we only call this though when we collide? So like if you manually stop
Yeah,
the game, it
it's only
won't
when we
update.
collide.
Ah, okay, that makes
Uh
sense then.
oh yeah, because I stopped it last time, right?
Yes, you stopped it last time and you were at
Yeah.
11 and it didn't update. So that was my next question was if we only updated on collision. So that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we could set it so that way it does it when we do it like an on destroy or something as well, but we don't have to.
Yep.
Let's figure out like a railway to work off of. So let's go ahead and create a variable. I'll say private. Let's go ahead and say that this is going to be an array of float. This is going to be a fixed position x, and we'll say that this is a new int. And our qualified positions, let's go ahead and say -8, 0, and +8. Those are the 3 positions that our obstacles are allowed to be on.
Okay.
And then for the float, for the random position x, let's go ahead and call that int. And it's going to be, and what I've noticed with the random range is it like starts at 0, and then the final value is like non-inclusive or something. Like you would think that because we have 3 array items, it would be 0 to 2. I don't know. I
Hmm.
don't know why it requires 3. I
Oh,
haven't
is
looked
it?
too much into it.
It's non-inclusive, right, on the second
Yeah,
parameter.
yeah, it's weird. We can change this to fixed position x. All right, and that should be good now. It should up. What's going on?
Is this another
Line 10.
autocorrect?
It has to be line 10. Where's line
Well,
10
you
here?
have a float array and then you have a new int array.
Oh, yeah, good call. There you go. Teamwork. All right. Well, while it's taking too long for who knows why, uh, what are we forgetting here? Should we move the cake around? I mean, the cake is going to be very similar to the what we did for the obstacle.
Yes, We should
just
probably
for the
have
sake of
that
it.
pooled as well.
Yeah. All right. I don't have a cake in here. I'll just create it this way while it's spazzing out. I'll call it cake CS, and I will copy the obstacle code over. And this will be cake. And honestly, technically, I could probably use the same script as I did for obstacle on the cake, because it doesn't look like it's doing anything specific to something cakey, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Do
other
we
than the
have
naming
a
convention.
distinction that running into a cake is not a game stopper? Like we shouldn't die when we run into a cake.
Yeah, that'll be in the player.cs file. I don't think anything in here is actually saying something obstacle or cake specific, right? I mean, we'll keep both of them for this example, but I think technically we could use the same one.
Yeah, it should be fine. We'll see it.
All right, what are the odds that this is done spazzing? Oh, it looks
Answered
like
your
it's
own question there.
spazzing even harder now. All right, so we have the cake. Let's go ahead and add it to the object pool, right? So I can do,
Yeah.
and there's creative ways to do this, but I'm just gonna say pooled cake.
This is the Friday way.
Yeah, this is the Friday way, the Friday end of the day way. Cake to pool, and then cake pool size, because we
Oh
don't
man,
know if we want the same amount as our obstacles.
we want more.
More cake? We
More
could.
cake. Probably gonna get some cake after this.
Oh my gosh! All right.
Subliminal messaging.
All right. So we have going on here. Old cake. Let's go ahead and copy this. People are probably cringing at the way I'm doing it right now.
Well, we said we would make it in an hour and a half, right? So
yeah,
this is commendable.
All right. Now, which ones have bad case sensitivity here?
Temp cake.
I think it'll yell at us if it's not right. All right. Does that look right? Probably.
Scroll up really quick. You have your list. Should be pooled cakes.
All right. Good catch. Good one.
Oh, also up when you declare it initially on line 13.
13. Interesting. All right. This is going to be get pooled cake. And
you know you can rename them all at the same time, right, Nick?
yeah, but it there's some case sensitivity issues. Is there a way to make it so that way I only when I do that kind of bulk highlight that it keeps the case?
Yeah, there's a similar function to control all.
Yeah, because if I
forget.
do Control
Wait,
D,
are you in? Mm-hmm.
it got the one with the uppercase C and the one with the lowercase c. Like, is there a
Oh,
way to
you
say
can
only get the lower cases?
you can skip that one by doing Control K, Control D.
What? Really? Oh my
Bam.
gosh. All right.
You're
Control
welcome.
K. All right. I will be using that one a lot, probably.
I use it all the time. When I have to auto or select multiple instances, sometimes it does that, right? It chooses
Yeah.
something correct, but the one that you don't want. And yeah, so you can use K, Control K to skip over it.
Well, I'm going to try something like this then. And I'm going to put it to the test right now. Oh, I don't know why I copied the whole thing. Go ahead and clone that.
Obstacle still looks like a weird word to me.
Yeah. All right. So Control
D.
Control K.
And Control. Yep.
Wow. I just skipped the wrong one.
Yeah. There's a shortcut to go back. I forgot. But
Uh-oh, it's going to get one too many. That's all right. All right, well, regardless, it was still convenient. All right, so I missed the lower cases, right?
mm-hmm.
All right, so we're good, hopefully. We're gonna, rather than having them on the same exact schedule,
Hold on. You gotta change line 11 to be cake time.
Oh, you caught one? Line 11?
Mm-hmm.
Cake time, yeah, you're right.
There you go.
And I'll change the timer on this, so so that way it's a little bit behind the cake, so that way they're not overlapping each other. Let's see if Unity ever woke up. It did finally.
Ah, nice.
So cake, does that have a script? Probably not, right? So
I don't
let's
think we
add the
added one.
script.
Now
The
it
movement
does.
speed will be 3. Let's go ahead and turn that into a prefab and remove it. And let's go ahead and go to our game controller, which never received our update. Did I save it?
Looks like
For
it.
object pool? Should.
What are you looking for? Oh no. Oh, there.
Oh, there
we go.
it's there now. All right,
Yeah.
maybe let's do like 5 cakes. You said you wanted a lot more. Doesn't matter.
15 cakes.
There you go.
Bam.
And let's drag it in.
Friday is made. Let's do this.
All right, what are the odds everything works right now?
It's gonna work. It's gonna work, Nick. It's Friday.
Oh, they're on
no.
fixed. Well, at least the obstacles are fixed.
Yeah.
The cakes never got called. So
where did we need to call? On update. Wait, how is that?
What?
How is that working? Because line 24 and line,
yeah,
we updated one too many.
It's spazzing out.
Same with line 24, right?
Uh-oh. Did I miss one?
Yeah, because it's the same as 32. So that one should be the obstacle. And also 30. Yeah.
All right. Maybe I should have done it this slow and laughable way.
No, it's good. All right, this should be it.
Fingers crossed. We got some cake.
Yes. Awesome.
All right, so you notice I hit the cake and it reset because we don't have a way to differentiate.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have a way to differentiate between collisions. If we go to player, every collision is the same.
Right.
So we need a way to, so we can tag them actually. So if I click on the prefab and I tag it, if I add a tag, let's go ahead and call that tag cake. And let's go ahead and add another tag called obstacle. And I click on cake and I say that this is tagged as cake. And this is tagged as obstacle. Pretty awesome naming conventions.
Wonderful.
If I go back into trigger and I say if collider.gameObject.tag equals obstacle, then we add to that. Yeah.
Then crash.
Otherwise,
well, really, we can pull set high score out, right? Because we got to do that no matter what. Or do you only want to do that?
After the game resets, because if we get a cake, that doesn't necessarily mean that we have a high score when we've collected cake. it's just going to add to our score, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can create more logic inside of the score controller.
Gotcha.
So for example, um, for set high score, we could also have a variable. Um, it doesn't even need to be saved to Realm because it doesn't need to persist beyond the instance, right? So
Yep.
why not maybe create another private variable? We'll call it int, and we can call it cake. And we can say that when it starts, we have 0 cake. And maybe we say public void eat cake. And we can say cake plus plus. And then what kind of multiplier do we want to do for this score? Should we
Should
just say
multiply the total score by the number of cakes you've received.
times cakes? All right.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, hold on. Actually, do we want to do that to the score itself, or do we want to do it to the high score?
Oh no, yeah, that's what I meant. The high score. So at the very, very end. But
All right.
really, it's doesn't matter.
All right. Times cake. Yeah.
Yep.
And do we want to have text on the screen to show our cakes or no? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter for now, since
All
we
right,
know
we're gonna
that we're
say,
using it as a multiplier.
all right, let's it should be high score, right? When we start eating those cakes. Ooh,
Oof.
it didn't disappear actually.
Oof.
I think it's still collecting them though.
Okay.
We just never add them back to the pool. Yeah,
Bam.
high score 52. So we could add them to the pool again. So we're gonna say I want it to be inside of cake. This is where I guess
Yeah.
things can get a little different.
Mhm.
So not only when it falls off the screen, but we can have on trigger. And we can say if collider dot game object equals let's call it player. We haven't set it to that yet, but we'll tag it as player.
Okay.
And if it hits the player, then we say game object. So the current game object is active to false. So if we go into the Unity scene here,
Just gotta tag our player, and then it should be good, right?
yeah, we got some more drama here. I guess while it's loading, maybe we walk through because this is done. I think it's
Sweet.
done, right?
Yeah.
It'll go on forever. All right. So I mean, we started with the player. The player's job is for movement left and right, and if we collide with either an obstacle or a cake, we either set a new high score, which we'll get to in a second, and we'll restart the scene, or we'll eat cake. If we look at the score controller, which is the next kind of step in our pipeline, this is where we actually work with Realm, and our Realm usage is very small in this example. It's just maintaining the high score, but we're getting an instance to Realm. We are doing a find operation based on our primary key of username. If it doesn't exist, then we create it and we zero out the high score, and then we're able to access that data directly. We're able to read from Realm directly, just like we would any kind of normal object, and that's why we're able to just constantly present the high score. And if we want to save the high score inside of this write block, we can actually just set our object field to whatever we want, and it'll save it for us. It'll persist it. In your game, we're going to explore other game scenarios on future streams, but maybe you want to store your player inventory in your game, or who knows what else you got, Adrian? What else might you want to store in your game for Realm?
Um, that's a great question. I can't. Maybe you want to store the actual number of cakes that you ate, or again, similar to our plummeting people, like how many miles or what distance you've traveled in Infinite Runner or something like that. Other kinds of different things. It depends on the game that you're making.
Yeah, it could be
But
in-game currency, right?
yes, that's another good example.
That the cakes could be your currency.
It's
Um,
always
but that's the realm portion. I mean, for the actual realm, for the object definition, just we're extending the realm object. We're defining our primary key field, and I know I promised that we could have used integer rather than realm integer. We still can, but the reason why you might use realm integer because, say for example, if I go to score controller, I'm just going to throw it randomly in here. We could have done something like inside the right block. We could have done something like player stats dot score dot increment and chosen a value to increment it by or decrement it. It's just it depends what you want to do.
why would you want to use a realm integer rather than just an int?
It's what's it called, a super class? Is that the correct terminology where you get more than
Super
just a
set,
primitive would give you? Yeah, I think that's the terminology,
superset, just
right?
like bson is a superset of JSON. Is that what?
Uh, Maybe. I mean, for example, this two-string method, like
Hmm.
int wouldn't have a two-string.
Hmm.
I don't think, but realm integer has a bunch of helper functions and things like that associated to
Ah,
it, but it's still an
okay,
int under the covers. I don't.
gotcha.
I mean, it's been so long since I've taken a computer science class that I don't even know how to explain it anymore.
No, that was a
um,
great explanation. I just wanted to know. I'm
yeah,
sure other people watching too are like, why would you use it? And that makes total sense. There are really nice built-in functions, and as you can see, this is one really good use case of why you would need a function like that, right? So,
yeah, definitely. Our object pool did most of the heavy lifting. Just created an X number of obstacles and cakes and set them all as false, and we pulled from that pool as necessary. We did that in our game controller based on a timer, so that way they're not all being dumped out at once. And then obstacle and cake have their own logic for positioning and figuring out when they should no longer be active. The only reason why we didn't have a trigger enter in the obstacle is because the player just resets the entire game when it collides, so there's no need. But the cake that shouldn't reset the game.
yep. And that's
Uh,
very common with at least the example game that we gave, which was Subway Surfer. You have multiple tries on a particular level, which matches how we've architected this now, right? You just start from the beginning right away.
yeah,
So yeah, we're
I'm
just
gonna restart
fully
Unity. I don't know what's
yeah.
going on. I'm gonna update before the next stream, and hopefully that corrects our problems here.
Sure.
It was working fine on Mac.
Right.
Yeah, right. What are the odds that it plays in it? Hopefully I saved, right?
Yes. Ooh, so let's see us
What
eat some
what wasn't
cake.
working previously?
That the
Oh,
cake.
cake wasn't disappearing. Um,
Maybe it didn't save.
yeah, let's see what we got here.
Oh, wait, we needed
Uh,
to tag the player, right?
oh yeah. That's right. You're right.
That's why.
So players untagged. Oh, there's already a player tag in there. So I'm gonna save it.
Sweet.
I'm gonna run it,
All right, now it should do it.
and yeah.
Bam.
And this will go
Nice.
on forever. Some things that you could add, like you could have another timer in there that says like maybe after 30 seconds or after your score reaches a certain number, then you could speed it up, and you can
Mm-hmm.
speed it up numerous ways. You saw that we had a movement speed variable. You could always increase that movement speed variable over time, or I think you
Mm-hmm.
could also change the time scale. So the time scale is 1 right now. 0 would pause the game completely. You could increase that, and it should speed everything up as well.
Ooh, that would be cool to have power-ups that came down where you could like bullet time freeze it and then collect all the cake and then,
Oh, no, no, no.
you
Time
know,
scale would freeze everything,
oh,
100% of the
everything,
game.
everything. Okay.
Yeah, what you would want to do is in that circumstance, you would probably want to increase the movement speed for the player based on a power up. Maybe cake is a power up.
Mm,
Who knows?
gotcha.
All right,
Oh, look at
741.
that.
That's quite a multiplier. But yeah,
Hey,
it goes on forever. And it's
sweet.
crude. It's crude compared to Subway Surfer and Temple Run and all those other games, but same
But
concept.
hey, the point is that all of the logic that you built here, that's essentially Subway Server. The rest of it is just really great graphics. Put some time into the artwork and a couple other features that extend, but the basics are right there. So in that sense, that's really awesome that we did this in less than 2 hours. So if you want to build your own Subway Surfer, just follow along here with the
Yeah,
stream.
and with minor adjustments to the game, I mean, as far as controls go, you could export it directly to mobile or whatever you want to do. Should
Hmm.
work fine. And Realm, like I said, it's alpha right now. It didn't come out too long ago, but it's very usable, and it'll give you an idea of what's to come. And if you've ever had to work with data in Unity, it's kind of a pain. I mean, we tried to experiment it with plummeting people last year, right, Adrian? It's kind of
Yeah.
rough.
Definitely. This is a much nicer way to handle that, and it doesn't clutter up the Unity code as much. So this will be really,
Yeah.
really useful.
Yeah, and I mean, as long as you're not prepared to use sync right now, if you follow the quick start for all of the local storage stuff, it's it's the same process. I think this is
So,
what for Xamarin or something. I'm not quite sure what the .NET SDK is for. I
no,
don't do a lot of Realm stuff, honestly. So this is
I
new to
think
me
this is
too.
the regular .NET app, so this should be fine. But yeah, that is it. Awesome job, Nick. I learned a lot
Sweet.
in this presentation. If you're watching this, we're probably going to add a bunch of links in the description on YouTube. This will be available on YouTube if you came in late or just want to rewatch it again and follow along. And so, yeah, we're going to have all that there. And then we're going to have our next stream at the end of next month, right, Nick? It's going to be the last Friday of every month. We'll be
Yeah, we're gonna
doing
try.
an what
Um,
game should we create? Chat. Let us know. Or if you think of something,
yeah,
tweet at us. What is the next game do you think we should build and stream on the last
and
Friday?
and lower your expectations. We're not gonna build the next Skyrim over here. We're gonna build something using probably crude artwork. But
People are like, build a
I think
better cyberpunk. Okay.
yeah,
In one
no.
hour. In one
Use
hour.
your we'll get the core concepts in there, but definitely not at the beauty of some of these studios that they do.
All right, that is it. Anything else you want to plug in or say, Nick?
Uh, no, I think that's good.
Sweet. Well, thank you everybody for joining us from Twitch, from YouTube. We appreciate you being here. It's a little late for us, but it's some nice Friday fun. And that is building an infinite runner in Unity and with Realm. So we will see you next time. Thanks everybody. Bye.